In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. So today is our Stewardship Sunday, and I wanted to take a few moments to talk about something that we all recognize that our brains process, and that is a gift to us, really, in our understanding of the world around us, and that's called perspective. The perspective that we are able to identify objects' distances from us by using our two eyes to coordinate how far it is away. And if you've ever done that experiment where you close one eye and try to tap your two fingers together from different hands, you will most likely miss them because you are only seeing from one side of your perspective. But there's also another dimension to perspective that goes a little bit beyond just what we see. And that's the perspective of what we do, who we are, and what we offer. You know, the other day I had a wedding rehearsal, and the bridesmaids and the groomsmen were up here, and there was a bunch of them, and many of them were not Orthodox. And so I said, you know, when you stand up here for the wedding, make sure you stand with your legs shoulder distance apart, relax your knees, don't lock your knees, because the wedding's about 3.5 hours. And I said it straight deadpan face. And the girls are like, and the guys are like looking over like each other. We did not sign up for this. And I said, no, it's about 35 minutes. And then you could see, they just kind of sunk back into their relaxed mode. But for that 3.5 hours, they were traumatized. However, if I said to you that the Divine Liturgy was 4 hours when St. John Chrysostom first initially penned the liturgy, and he spoke for multiple hours, I know as a priest, if I spoke for more than 25, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, probably a lighter Sunday the next week. And even so, the message of God, many times people are concerned more about the time than the actual message. However, how many people have seen the movie Titanic? Raise your hand if you've seen that. Come on. I know it's embarrassing because you got to put your hands up, right? That movie was what? 3.5 hours. And you sat through to the very end to watch the wife or his girlfriend hog the door, right? And let him drown. I just heard too recently from someone that said, in honor of the new Star Wars movie coming out, that a group of friends were going to get together and watch all 6 movies back to back. And I'm sure that there's some of you who watch one back to back. I won't ask you to raise your hand. Or those who sit in front of the television at night from dinner time to bedtime, staring as a zombie at the screen, waiting to decompress, to unwind, watching things that are not only many times inappropriate, but just non-salvific and non-helpful to our souls. They say that the average American watches an enormous amount of television. However, the average American spends very little time in church. So it's about perspective. And I'm not saying that, you're here, so you're doing your end. You're here in church, and many of you, I look out, you're here all the time. So I'm not hammering you and saying, why don't you come to church? That would be ridiculous because you're in church. However, what I'm saying is the balance in our lives has to be there in everything. So when we come to the services, we should not begrudge the length of the services and then say, because I have a golf tournament I have to go to and spend 4 hours on a golf course chasing the bad hits that we do. It's okay to golf. It's okay to have these other modes of relaxation. However, there has to be a perspective in how much time we spend doing one thing and how much time we spend doing the other. How much time in the secular, how much time in the spiritual. Likewise, with our talents and our gifts, many times I go to people's homes and they're out telling me about their gardens or whatever their passion is in their home, where they use their hands to do this work, whether it's cooking, whether it's gardening, whether it's decorating, projects, whatever it is, and there's an extraordinary amount of effort that's placed behind those talents that are put into the home. And then I look at the same hand and say, are these people helping the church when we reach out for need, when we reach out for volunteers, when we ask for simple things? We see people with meticulous backyards and homes, and yet here, many times there's coffee cups left on the pangati, and we wait for the janitor to pick them up, or we wait for somebody else to pick them up. So doing things at home and doing things for our jobs and the secular society has to be in perspective of what we do for the church as well. And then when it comes to our treasures, everybody throughout, one of the quickest things I realized after ordination was that it's not going to be about how good you sing. It's not going to be about how well you can speak in different languages. But the number one criticism will always be the priest is always asking for money. And there's a phrase that says, if the priest doesn't ask for money, who's going to ask for it? And the other thing, too, that we see in the New Testament is St. Paul was one who asked for support for the church. So in asking, I say to you today that I only ask one time a year. I only ask on Stewardship Sunday. I mean, we have other drives, I said, for the icons, but I ask you on this day to consider the perspective of what those three elements are: what you invest in time, what you invest in your talents, and also what you invest in your treasures. I know that many times we spend money for things, and there's these solid costs that you can't get around. Everyone pretty much needs the internet these days. There's no easy way or inexpensive way to get the internet. Whether it's on your phone or whether it's in your home, there's no inexpensive way to do that. But in asking for these three things today, your time, your talent, and your treasures, I figured there's someone extraordinarily better at requesting everything from you, requesting a perspective, and putting into perspective everything that we do in our lives and everything. And so I wanted to not have the request come from me this year for stewardship. I'm not going to ask you for anything. I figured that I would have a guest speaker come today to be with us in the Divine Liturgy to speak with us about stewardship. And that guest speaker is renowned for many things in Christianity. You probably have heard of him if you've read anything in the news recently or in the past. And so without, I think he's right here. And it's St. Athanasios. You laugh because you were expecting someone else, but who better to ask us and to request from us our love and our time and our talents and our treasures than our beloved St. Athanasios? You know, when you think about the relics, you know, we had the festival last weekend, and so many people came from other parts of Christianity, from all over the area, from the far suburbs to people who lived in Aurora. And every time I mentioned that we had the relics of St. Athanasios here, everyone's jaw dropped. And they said, how is that? How did you get the relics of St. Athanasios? And I explained to them, the path, the multi-thousand mile path to get here, and the over 1,700 years to be here in our presence. So what I ask you today is, what does he mean to you? And what is he saying to you? You know, this is an extraordinary gift for our church. It's an extraordinary gift for all of you. To have the presence of the actual saint that we strive to please and strive to bring Christianity into the western suburbs and the Orthodox Church. And I say to you, what will we do to hold up the name of St. Athanasius in the name of the Orthodox Church. Because I know that's what he's asking. He's saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to move it forward? What can you do, not only from a financial perspective, but what can you do from your time? What can you do from your talents? And to think about the fact, too, that as I was giving those tours, people said, where's the nearest Orthodox church from here? Because many people expected that, like in the Catholic Church, that there's one a mile and a half this way, there's another one this way, and we're partitioned off in neighborhoods, and you can't go for a wedding, even though you might like the interior of a church in another Catholic church, you have to go in your own neighborhood. It's very similar to what they do in Greece. And I said, well, our nearest sister churches are DeKalb, Joliet, Elmhurst, Westchester, and Elgin. And they said, wow, that's a huge area. And I said, yeah, it's our parishioners that we draw from, believe it or not, is 2,000 square miles. 2,000 square miles of where you live. Funny numbers or made-up numbers, but if you plot out the edges of all the parishioners in this church, it's 2,000 square miles. And what can we do to make sure that the name of St. Athanasius continues to be proclaimed and continues to grow in the western suburbs? So I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'm going to let St. Athanasius ask you. And to really search your heart and to think about the great joy, as we say in the wedding service, that may come upon the new couple, the great joy which the Blessed Helen felt when she found your precious cross. And I ask you on this day, think of that great joy that came to us at the Vesper service when we processed with the relics of St. Athanasius for the first time and welcomed them into our church. What is he saying to you? What is he saying to give of your life? And as we say in the church, let us commit ourselves and one another and our whole life to Christ our God. So, with that being said, this great order, this great suffering saint that we have his whole life image on the back of the church, and we have his physical presence in the front of the church here, and his mystical presence in the altar and throughout the church and throughout your homes, I ask you, what is he saying to you? So, as you received your stewardship cards today, I was going to ask Costa to sing, but I'm going to ask for everyone to be silent, to think for a moment. Before you start writing numbers, before you start saying what you're going to do in your stewardship card for anything, I want you to think about what St. Athanasius is saying. And what I want to do is, we're going to do something a little different. Fota, you're going to take this and put it in the middle of the church. Put it right in the center of the aisle. So what we're going to do is, because when we say Christ is in our midst, he was, is, and always shall be, I'm going to say to you today that St. Athanasius is in your midst. And I want you to think about what he's asking and fill out your stewardship cards.